Hi, I'm Gavin Wood. Thanks for joining me, taking the time, and thank you to Ready Layer 1 for this great conference that they've put together. I plan to detail the Polkadot launch plan for you today, but first, maybe it would be nice for us to give you a little video of how we got to where we are today. We were just kind of thinking how we could maybe create the next version of Ethereum if we sort of had a green field to design upon. So we already have technologies such as Bitcoin and Ethereum, which are able to in some sense disintermediate many of the middlemen, many of the institutions and authorities, and remove the need for much of the trust in society. But what we currently have is a patchwork of, if you like, independent and isolated legal systems of the internet. And this is problematic because it creates many different groups who, although they share the same vision, they have misalignment in how they wish to achieve it, creating borders where borders don't need to be there. We have this great new technology that is allowing us to automate one of the sort of very fundamental aspects of an economy, which is trust, right? Which is this idea that I can have reasonable expectations of what's going to happen without having to trust someone.
Especially if we engage with so many different third parties.
There was a general idea back in 2014 when we were starting Ethereum that Ethereum 2 should be being under development by late 2016, and here we were sitting around in autumn of 2016, and there was absolutely no indication that there was going to be any development, significant at least, on Ethereum 2 for some time. So really we wanted to push forward with that one way or another. Let's embark on something that we think will be complementary to Ethereum 2, a system in parallel that can fulfill things that probably Ethereum 2 is going to be less than optimal at fulfilling, and ideally that will interoperate with Ethereum 2 as well. So Polkadot is a multi-chain. The idea is that it's a blockchain, but we bundle lots of different blocks up all at the same time that can be executed in parallel, right? So these things can all be executed at the same time. In doing so, we create this sort of idea of a multi-chain because every block is actually lots of different blocks. Then we can, in principle, run 100 times the amount of transaction throughput that just one chain, like Bitcoin or Ethereum, could. Polkadot is, in many respects, the biggest bet in this ecosystem against chain maximalism. Even if there were one perfect chain, I don't think it would stay perfect for very long. I would try to convince people that it's really not such a good plan to be so focused on backing one winner above all others. I have here, fresh from the Apple Store, a shrink-wrapped MacBook Pro. And I'm going to give you a demo of developing a custom blockchain and upgrading it online using this very computer. So let's see what I can do in 15 minutes. So we've downloaded a package called the Substrate node template. What this is a very small repository that acts as a sort of skeleton blockchain. Ultimately, we didn't end up using our sort of Ethereum technology set for implementing Polkadot. Instead, we created a sort of whole other one, Substrate. Now, Substrate is basically this blockchain framework The idea is that you can make new blockchains from it. You can place this specialized logic and use the specialized logic in order to, process transactions. It's written in such a way that it works both as a blockchain that just exists on its own, like Bitcoin and Ethereum and all the others, and it exists as a blockchain that exists under the Polkadot umbrella as one of these, what we call parachains, what some people call shards. At the moment, if you think you've got what it takes to develop a sort of low-level technology, you go the whole hog and you write a whole new blockchain, and that takes a very, very, very long time and a lot of skill. I really hope we can create a whole new class of development teams and development application where you don't have to know everything, you don't have to do everything to develop your whole new blockchain, but you can do just enough that you do have a domain-specific chain that has its own parameterization and its own features that allow you to get a particular job done and done well that wouldn't have been possible before because smart contracts are too bloaty and writing your own chain is too much work. And that is as simple as it is to create a whole new, different chain that has this whole new piece of functionality in Substrate. I feel that my value add for the world is in creating technical solutions for things and delivering them. If I don't build stuff for a while, then I am in some sense addicted to it. This basically allows every coder to also be a businessman. They just place an algorithmic service online, and it's a self-sovereign, autonomous, economically strong business. You heard the phrase like, the pen is mightier than the sword. Well, the keyboard's going to become even mightier than the pen pretty soon. The world, in some sense, belongs to coders. So now into the detail. We are very near launch. Technically speaking, things are coming together nicely. And I'm really excited to share this experience with you and the rest of the Polkadot community around the world. So the Polkadot network is going to have a phased rollout plan with important milestones towards decentralization and permissionlessness, marking each phase in the process. The launch begins with what we call a chain candidate. This will be launched by the Web3 Foundation. And it's a proposal, nothing more, proposal for the Polkadot relay chain. Now the chain candidate is launching a Genesis block. It is the launch of a new chain, but the chain that is being launched is a proof of authority chain. So it's one that has one that the Web3 Foundation has complete control over. As such, this isn't a real cryptocurrency. This isn't any real kind of currency. People can't transfer any of the tokens on it. In effect, it's just a bookkeeping exercise. It's a staging area for us to move further. And what it does is it allows us to start the chain without having to have a sort of a set of validators already assembled, and without us having to trust in our potentially unfilled governance structures to move the chain forward. So the initial phase, as I say, the chain candidate gets launched. Proof of authority chain candidate, kind of similar to most of the test nets. The main difference is that this particular test net may eventually transition into the real Polkadot blockchain. If for some reason one of the chain candidates fails, this is likely to be a very unforeseen reason. We wouldn't launch it if we knew of reasons why it would fail. But if it does fail, then it's easy for us to launch a second chain candidate and even a third chain candidate. Kusama went through 3 chain candidates before it landed on the network that we now call Kusama today. This chain is, although there's a genesis block for it, it's not necessarily the genesis block for the final Polkadot chain. There may be a number of unforeseen circumstances that would lead us to discarding this chain and starting another chain. That said, in principle, this could become the final Polkadot chain. You can think of it as a staging ground as much as a proposal, allowing us to evolve a very basic restricted chain into something that is finally decentralized and permissionless. So the initial chain has a restricted runtime. It's limited to basic operations in order to gain confidence in the network's stability. Client stability, the stability overall of both the community and of the underlying code. Now this restricted runtime will have its limitations be lifted through a series of governance decisions. The governance apparatus for this chain is a sudo module. Now a sudo module is a very special module. It basically allows a single element, a single actor, the Web3 Foundation in this case, to issue any kind of command that it wants, rewriting the chain's logic and reprogramming the chain as it desires. So during the first phase, Polkadot will operate as a purely proof of authority chain. So proof of authority consensus simply means that we have a number of authorities on behalf of the Web3 Foundation, fixed validator nodes, and these validator nodes, they will never change. They will always be operated by the Web3 Foundation, and they will be the ones producing new blocks and finalizing blocks. Now during this phase, the chain will be limited to only a couple of pieces of functionality. The first piece will be, actually three pieces of functionality. The first is the sudo module. So this will allow the Web3 Foundation to upgrade the chain as it desires. The second pieces are pieces of functionality that can be used by the Polkadot community. The first is allowing claims, so that dot tokens, or at least dot token sort of indicators, can be claimed. The second piece of functionality allows those who hold dot token allocations to signal their intention to stake and become validators, or nominators for that matter. In this phase, the only validators will be the Web3 Foundation's validator nodes, but others can signal their intent. And when we have enough people signaling their intent, then we move to phase 2. The Web3 Foundation will issue a sort of special command using its sudo functionality, using its sudo permissions, and we will switch from proof of authority to proof of stake. And all of those stakers with their dot allocations that had signaled their intention to become validators, they will be, well, at least some of them will be selected to become validators, and we will see the chain move from being operated merely by the Web3 Foundation to being operated by an international selection of validators. So while the chain is running under proof of authority, it's really just trust in the Web3 Foundation that we have to expect this chain candidate to continue. Once it moves to proof of stake, or nominated proof of stake, our variant of it, then it will be quite different, and we'll be trusting in the economics of our cryptographic logic, the economics of our crypto-economic logic. Now, once the chain has been running well with a large validator set, then the sudo key will be used a second time, and we'll be able to move to phase 3. Phase 3 is where the sudo key has enabled various pieces of governance to function. The governance apparatus of Polkadot is fairly sophisticated now. It's evolved alongside Kusama. And broadly speaking, there are sort of 4 modules. One is the referendums module, allowing a coin-weighted voting system. That means that dot token holders are able to basically alter the fate of the Polkadot network. The second is the council module, allowing dot token holders to elect a number of members to the Polkadot Council. The Polkadot Council doesn't actually have very much hard power, but it is able to steer the legislative agenda and potentially remove dangerous upgrades that might be voted on by the token holders. The third element is the technical committee. This is a non-voted body, and it's selected simply by those teams that have properly implemented Polkadot. It doesn't have any real substantial power, but it is able to fast track certain upgrades, certain changes to the chain that it believes are important. Usually these will be bug fixes. Then the fourth piece of the governance apparatus is the Treasury. The Treasury allows the council, as well as as well as the assembled DOT token holders, to place funds that have been amassed through the staking system, through the block reward system, and put them to use on things typically external to Polkadot, whatever they may be. Again, these are all elements of the Kusama governance system, and if you would like to learn more about them, you only need to look as far as Kusama. Now, once the council and the various other governance modules are in place, the public, the DOT token holders, have the avenues to affect changes in the system. Basically, the fate of Polkadot is now in the hands of the token holders. A final runtime upgrade initiated by the Web3 Foundation will remove the sudo module, and in doing so remove its omnipotent position as being able to cancel the chain, as being able to create a new chain candidate. At that point, Polkadot is a live, decentralized and permissionless network. The final stages of Polkadot's rollout will be delivering these extra pieces of functionality. One of those extra pieces of functionality will be the balance transfers. This will allow DOT tokens to be transferable and not just an indicator. And this will likely happen very soon after the sudo module is released. But of course, we don't know at what point, because it will be in the hands of the DOT token holders. Two more post-sudo upgrades will necessarily include the rollout of the first parachains, and eventually parachain and parathread purchasing or leasing modules. And finally, the XCMP cross-parachain message passing system. These will be rolled out as they become available, as their code is finalized, and as the audits are completed, and will be done in concert between the various technical implementation teams, the research teams, and the DOT holding community. And that's basically it. The launch of Polkadot in 5 or 6 phases, I guess. Thanks for listening. I'm Gavin Wood, and I hope this talk has been enlightening.